Hello, I'm Elizabeth Ann Stewart, and I'm really excited to let you know about a workshop, a three session workshop I'll be offering at the Infinity Foundation in January and February of 2019, and the details are in the fall and winter catalogue. You probably have a copy, and if not, you can go online to the InfinityFoundation.org and find all the details there. I just want to talk a little bit about the workshop itself and about why it means so much to me to be offering this workshop. The title of the workshop is Sufi Mysticism, and I want to begin by saying that I am not a Sufi. However, apparently I was handed the mantle of succession by a Sufi leader in 1993 at the Parliament of the World's Religions, where I had an amazing encounter with this particular individual. And I don't know how many years later, it was 2004 when I discovered the meaning of our encounter. 1993 was the second Parliament of the World's Religions, and I was presenting some of my poetry there, and that's when I encountered this particular person. And then in 2004, I happened to be having dinner with a group of Sufis and shared with them my experience at the earlier Parliament. We were in Barcelona for the third Parliament of the World's Religions, and so we're doing a lot of sharing and talking over dinner. And I happened to mention what had happened in Chicago, and I was assured by the Sufi group that I'd been handed the mantle of succession by this particular leader. I will give the full details of the encounter during my workshop. I prefer not to talk about this on the internet, on YouTube for public consumption. But it's enough to say that that experience was very powerful, and the comments I received from the Sufi community were very affirming and humbling, you might say. I am myself a Christian, and I have found that the Sufi path is very compatible with my own tradition, and it seems to be compatible with all the traditions of the world. In fact, in the mystical arena, most traditions share much in common. Usually the classical three experiences of one, going through a period of purgation or dark night. Secondly, moving into a place of illumination or seeing. And then thirdly, the place of oneness or divine unity. And those three qualities we find, I believe, in every religious tradition. It is possible to reach a mystical state in other ways, through ecstasy, through pleasure. But I believe that most people who end up on the mystical path end up going through those classical three stages. And these are very true of the mystical path as manifested in the Sufi text, The Conference of the Birds, which, next to the Bible, is probably my favorite book in the world. And this is a very, very old copy that I have commented in, and the pages are brown and torn, and lots of underlining of key passages which have meant something to me. And I've used this text in countless classes at DePaul University mostly, and Columbia College. This was a text that I would assign over and over again when talking about mystical experience. The reason being is that it embodies exactly what I just said. It embodies those three experiences of dark night, that is purgation. Secondly, reaching a place of illumination or seeing. In Dante's Inferno, Dante is able to see once he has washed the filth of hell from his eyes, and then he begins to see. And so too on the mystical journey and the Sufi journey, when one has washed away the filth of ignorance, narcissism, and all those other nasty isms, then we can behold divinity. And then finally, there's the place of divine union. Now, not everyone who takes the workshop necessarily will believe in the divine presence. However, you can always substitute your own language and talk about unity of self, connectedness with others, so interconnectedness with other people, with other beings. That's comfortable language which will work with this particular text. So in a nutshell, the Conference of the Birds by Farud Ibn Attar is a journey of 30 birds to find the Seymour, or their spiritual leader. And each of the birds has to overcome a tragic flaw or some kind of major impediment. And so we have the nightingale, who's in love with love. We have the heron, who's in love with melancholy. We have the duck, who's very comfortable and familiar in her pond and doesn't want to leave, very reluctant to go anywhere. We have the owl, who collects and observes and is detached from humanity. We have the finch, who's afraid of everything and mostly of getting his or her feathers singed. So our starting point for this workshop will be to identify which bird is most active in us, or which cluster of birds, because sometimes, although there's a dominant bird that seems to be governing our life choices, there are other birds that are there as well. And some of them have redeeming qualities and some of them have negative impact. So we will start off by seeing which birds are manifesting in our lives, and then we will look at the stories of these birds and see how these stories echo our own life stories. And we will share stories with one another before venturing to the 7 terrible valleys, where we will be stripped of every vestige of ego. And so there's a playful element to this. It's easier to talk about being in love with love itself, or being a hopeless romantic, or being pessimistic, when you are talking about your bird qualities instead of sin. So it's a wonderfully friendly, user-friendly way of examining oneself, one's own life, and seeing one's, what drags one down and prevents one from flying and soaring on the spiritual plane. So our task then is to take flight with these 30 birds, discover who we are, discover how to penetrate into these valleys and emerge with our wings intact, so we can eventually behold the Seymour. And that is the great secret of the journey, how we will find the Seymour, or the great spiritual leader. And just as the 30 birds are in for a huge surprise at the end of the book, so we who journey with them will also have a big surprise when we discover what it is we're really looking for and how to get there. So I hope I've intrigued you a little bit with this journey of radical renunciation of all that is ego, and a radical embracing of all that is good, true, and beautiful. I hope you will take flight with me. I look forward to spreading my wings with yours, and also to coming to the journey's end and finding the Seymour together. So on that happy, cheerful note, I will bid goodbye and look forward to seeing you in the new year.